It was a bright and sunny morning when Shim Jae-sip found himself sleeping in an unfamiliar place. As he sat up, a wave of shock washed over him upon seeing the situation around him. Confused and overwhelmed, he began to blame himself, silently repeating that he must have done something foolish. He reminded himself that his name was Shim Jae-sip, a college student, and wondered what in the world had happened there. Looking around, he noticed that 3 girls were sleeping beside him, deepening his confusion. His thoughts raced as he tried to recall the events of the previous night, but all he could remember was being drunk. He vaguely recalled that they had all participated in a cardio session the night before. The idea slowly crept into his mind that he may have seriously messed up, possibly with all 3 girls. He was convinced he had made a huge mistake, and it all seemed to have started just a few hours ago. His memory took him back to about 3 hours earlier, when he had been at a group meeting. Moon Ae-ri, a 23-year-old fellow student from his college, had been shouting at the group in frustration, her voice rising particularly at Ju Soo-ah. She had demanded to know how Soo-ah could be so careless, especially after being tasked with finding research materials, only to submit a copy-pasted article from Wikipedia. Ju Soo-ah had looked confused and asked if Ae-ri was really speaking to her. Ae-ri snapped back, saying she could have at least taken the time to annotate the article. Soo-ah responded hesitantly, admitting that she wasn't good at annotating. Another girl in the group, Bang Si-hyun, a 20-year-old junior, tried to defuse the tension by suggesting that she could handle the parts assigned to Soo-ah instead. Soo-ah, touched by her kindness, thanked Si-hyun warmly, calling her gesture very considerate. But Ae-ri immediately objected, saying that letting Si-hyun cover for Soo-ah would only encourage her bad habits. Offended, Soo-ah questioned how Ae-ri could speak like that to her senior. Ae-ri didn't back down and reminded her that this wasn't the first time. In previous projects, Soo-ah had made similar excuses, saying she was too busy while others ended up doing all the work. Soo-ah defended herself, saying that she at least tried to make it up to the group by buying them drinks, cheering them up, and making sure they weren't bored. Ae-ri coldly responded that those efforts were useless and didn't contribute to the actual work. Then she turned to Shim Jae-sip, telling him to stop sitting silently and say something. Just then, Jae-sip's phone buzzed with a message from someone saved as Honey. It read, "Let's stop seeing each other. My mother says we don't match." The group members immediately noticed his pale expression and asked what was wrong. As he sat there in stunned silence, he reflected on how the message had arrived during their group meeting. The pain of that sudden breakup hit him hard, and he began crying uncontrollably. It had only been 2 days since the breakup, and he felt like he had been completely abandoned. His mind spiraled with desperate thoughts. He even questioned whether this was a dream. He wondered if spinning his phone would break the illusion or if jumping off the building might snap him awake. Everyone in the group panicked as they noticed his strange behavior. They rushed to stop him, shouting at him and asking if he had gone crazy. But for Jae-sip, the heartbreak had come so suddenly that it felt unreal. Later that night, in an effort to lift his spirits, the 3 girls decided to throw a party just for him. Their idea was simple, to get completely blackout drunk and help him forget the pain. Jae-sip recalled how they kept handing him drinks until his heartbreak began to blur. During the party, Soo-ah leaned toward him and asked if he was feeling any better. He responded weakly that he guessed he was. Soo-ah gently told him not to let the breakup get to him. If a girl could end things simply because her mother told her to, she clearly wasn't worth his sorrow. She encouraged him to forget someone like that and move on, telling him he could get revenge just by finding someone even better. Tears welled up in his eyes again as he looked at her, asking if she really thought someone like him, a loser, could ever find someone new. Soo-ah reassured him that if he couldn't, she'd introduce someone to him herself. For now, though, she told him to cry his heart out and promised to listen to whatever he needed to say. After all, there was no rule that said a guy couldn't cry. Moon Ae-ri chimed in, suggesting they drink all night and promising to take care of him. But Soo-ah pulled him closer and challenged Ae-ri, saying this wasn't what they had agreed to. He was only supposed to drink a little. She questioned how Ae-ri could just leave him in this state, especially after what had happened earlier when he nearly tried to harm himself. Ae-ri tried to defend herself, insisting that she wasn't being cold-hearted, but that their project still needed to be completed. She turned to Si-hyun, asking her to weigh in, but Si-hyun sided with Soo-ah, calling Ae-ri out for being heartless. Ae-ri, taken aback, asked if Si-hyun was drunk. But Si-hyun insisted that Jae-sip was going through something terrible and deserved their support, not indifference. She assured Jae-sip that she would stay by his side, saying she liked the idea of doing so. Sua added that the vote was now 3-1 and teased Ae-ri, asking what she would do now. Then she called out to the waiter, requesting 5 bottles of soju and 2 pitchers of beer. Back in the present, Jae-sip lay there with fragments of the previous night flashing through his mind. He remembered everything up to that moment, but after that, it was all a blur. He couldn't figure out why the night had ended the way it did. He wondered how much he had drunk for his memory to have vanished so completely. Yet, despite everything, one thing became clear to him, and that realization brought a strange happiness. But as the clarity set in, he knew he had to leave before he started overthinking. Staying there any longer would only get him into more trouble. It was in room 302 of the college building where everything seemed to resume its usual pace, at least on the surface. After the strange incident that morning, Shim Jae-sip had made his way back to college. One of his friends approached him, noticing something odd, and asked what was wrong, pointing out how dull he looked. Jae-sip sat silently, lost in his thoughts, yet a faint smile played on his face. He was quietly thinking to himself that he couldn't recall everything that had happened. His friend, noticing the unusual smile, commented that he seemed overly excited and asked if something good had happened. Jae-sip simply replied that nothing had happened. His friend didn't buy it and questioned what he meant by nothing, especially after all that had gone on. Jae-sip, still lost in thought, admitted internally that, to be honest, what had occurred that morning had been mentally exhausting, something he wished he could erase from his memory. Yet, even with all the chaos, there were small positives. He had gotten a glimpse of the girls' workout techniques, and even if he had gotten slapped, maybe it was worth it. Who knew what would come of it? As he sat in class, he noticed Ae-ri sitting nearby. Looking at her, he began wondering if perhaps that chaotic incident had somehow brought him closer to the 3 girls. Ae-ri suddenly caught him smiling and snapped at him, asking what he was looking at and if he had a death wish. Embarrassed, he quickly turned his face away and muttered that it was nothing. Even now, he felt uncertain about what had actually taken place that morning. The incident had created a distance between them, and it seemed their lives had all shifted because of it. Ever since that day, many things had changed. During a recent group project discussion, he had asked Si-hyun if she could hand him the summary on financial returns. She appeared nervous and avoided eye contact as she passed him the summary, unable to meet his eyes. Then Ae-ri walked over and reminded Jae-sip sternly that if he had anything to say, he should send a message instead of speaking directly. She has become more arrogant lately. She added coldly that if he spoke without permission again, she would remove him from the group. Her constant irritation with him was becoming exhausting. Among them all, Sua was the only one who hadn't changed, at least not entirely. When she found out that Ae-ri had tried to push Jae-sip out of the group, Sua had stepped in to defend him, trying to reason with Ae-ri. Actually, Sua had changed slightly. She had started to show more of her true self to him. The emotional distance between them seemed to shrink. At first, he thought she might be trying to grow closer to him, but over time, he began to doubt that was her intention. A few days ago, he and Sua had found themselves alone in the meeting room, but that day, she had just sat there quietly, doing nothing, and then left without a single word, as if there had been no purpose to their meeting. He wondered if he had done something wrong to upset her and couldn't understand why she was acting so distant. During one of the project sessions, Ae-ri had lashed out at him again, accusing him of formatting the SPSS file incorrectly. He had looked back at her and reminded her that she had asked him to do something he didn't even know how to do. She snapped again, demanding why he couldn't even answer her properly. But he remained silent, thinking to himself that she had already instructed him not to speak in group settings. Seeing the tension, Sua quickly stepped in and suggested they take a short break. She stood up and started to walk out. Ae-ri, annoyed, asked where she was going. Sua replied that she didn't like the atmosphere in the room and needed some fresh air. She sarcastically added that she didn't realize she now needed Ae-ri's permission for everything just because she was the team leader. She told them all to take it easy. Jae-sip silently thanked Sua in his mind, knowing she had helped him avoid yet another outburst or possible escalation with Ae-ri. That night, while walking through the streets, He reflected on the day. He thought things had gone okay, but the reality of having to deal with this situation for the next 3 months weighed heavily on him. It was too late to drop the course now. Suddenly, Sua appeared behind him, playfully asking where he was headed, addressing him as young man. Surprised, he turned around and asked what had brought her there. He was about to comment on her sudden appearance when she cut him off and warned him to watch where he was walking, saying he almost stepped into the street and could have been hit by a car. She added that the road was always ahead and that there wasn't enough time to be looking down. He smiled and asked where she had heard something like that. She replied by asking him the same, and he told her it was a line from a webtoon. She then shifted the conversation, asking if Ae was the reason behind his mood. She told him not to worry too much, explaining that Ae was only acting that way because she felt embarrassed. Jae-seop asked what exactly Ae was embarrassed about. Sua replied that Ae didn't like looking vulnerable or appearing rattled in front of others. Then she leaned in a little closer to him and admitted softly that on that day, Ae had been feeling really embarrassed. Sua suggested that they should go together, just the two of them. Jae-seop's mind instantly froze on those words. Just the two of them, he wondered if it meant what he thought it did. Or perhaps it was simply about doing a workout session together. Sua smiled at him in response, offering no further explanation, while Jae-seop, flustered, tried to downplay his reaction and stated that it should be straightforward. She asked him what he wanted and questioned whether he was going to do the cardio session with her or not. He sat there in silence, caught in a storm of thoughts. He considered the consequences. If he accepted her offer, he would end up skipping the team meeting, which would definitely make Eri furious. On the other hand, if he requested Sua to postpone the session until after the meeting, she might coldly dismiss him with a phrase like, "Forget about it, loser," and walk away as she often did when annoyed. Yet if he chose to skip the session, he would have to deal with Eri's wrath. The aftermath terrified him. The entire situation felt like a genuine dilemma. Sua observed him with mild impatience and asked why he was overthinking something so simple. She pressed him to just give an answer. Did he want to do the exercise session with her, or did he not? Jae-seop admitted to himself that she was right. This wasn't something that required deep contemplation. Meanwhile, Sua found amusement in watching him struggle with such a simple decision, silently thinking that the boy was having a hard time making up his mind. He kept calculating every outcome. If he picked Sunbae, he would enjoy the present moment, but likely face consequences later. If he chose the team meeting, he'd be miserable now but safe afterward. And if he begged and pleaded a little, maybe Sunbae would agree to play a video game with the group instead. Weighing all his options, the answer became obvious to him. Later, Sua and Jae-seop found themselves inside her residence. Sua opened the fridge and casually asked if he was fine with just beer. Jae-seop respectfully answered yes, and she handed him a bottle. She then commented that she had some snacks around somewhere and began looking for them. The two sat together and began to relax. Jae-seop took a sip of his drink and remarked that he lived for this kind of taste. He recalled the times when it had been illegal for him to drink and wondered aloud how people had even managed to survive without it. He noted to himself that Sua was just 1 year ahead of him at their college. His gaze lingered on her. He noticed how relaxed she seemed in her outfit and movement. She liked drinking, she liked dancing, and she reminded him of those carefree girls who enjoyed attention. But as he thought further, he realized that this was their first time drinking alone together. Sua turned to him and asked why he was sitting so far away. She encouraged him to move a little closer, teasingly questioning whether he was shy. Then she affectionately referred to him as her little Jae-seop and said it was cute. Jae-seop felt awkward. He wasn't sure how to respond to being called cute. It felt strange to be described that way as a man. Yet he acknowledged to himself that perhaps that's just how she was. Sua treated everyone with the same friendliness, without any form of discrimination. Still, there were moments when he truly had no idea what went through her head. As the evening progressed, he admitted that he was slowly beginning to feel ready for the workout session. He remembered that Sua was now 24 years old and, under normal circumstances, she would have already graduated. He would not be seeing her around campus anymore. But as he had heard, she had studied abroad for 2 years, which explained her continued presence at the university. Perhaps her time abroad also explained why she was so comfortable getting close to him. Eventually, Sua mentioned that they had finished eating and suggested they get ready for a late-night yoga session. They began stretching and preparing for it. She started asking about various yoga techniques and methods with intense curiosity. Jae-seop guided her through each step, noting to himself how strange the whole situation was. She remained focused on learning and even remarked that he could do whatever he wanted. She would do anything for the sake of this yoga session. As they continued, Jae-seop reflected that this was technically his second time doing yoga. Eri sat quietly on the bus, her gaze fixed on the city lights blurring past the window. Her mind was far from the present moment, replaying everything that had happened. She couldn't shake the growing feeling that something was off. One by one, everyone had left without saying much. Was it really just a coincidence that it happened while she had gone to the bathroom for a short while? She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, only to see a message from Sihyun waiting for her. The message read that she wasn't feeling well and had decided to leave early. Reading that message left a strange emptiness in Eri's chest. Of all the people, Sihyun was the one she thought would never quietly disappear like that. Had she really been unwell, or was it an excuse? Eri couldn't help but wonder if she was the common thread, the root of the unease in the group. Her thoughts shifted back to the recent confrontation. She remembered the cold, defiant expression on Suhan's face when he had said that he didn't need her permission to step outside, even if she was the team leader. That moment had hit her harder than she had let on. Now, sitting alone with only the quiet hum of the bus engine and the weight of her thoughts, guilt began to creep in. Maybe she had been too controlling. Maybe she had pushed everyone too hard. Her pride wouldn't allow her to admit it earlier, but deep inside, she was beginning to realize her approach might have alienated those she was trying to work with. She sighed, thinking to herself that perhaps she owed both Sua and Jae-seop an apology if not for her actions, then at least for the misunderstanding that followed them. Elsewhere, Jae-seop and Sua were immersed in their resistance cardio session in the quiet privacy of her room. The atmosphere was relaxed, lit by soft lighting and the faint rustling of their movements. Jae-seop offered to introduce more workout techniques, clearly eager to take the lead. Jae-seop was sitting with his friends in the college courtyard, enjoying a rare moment of idle chatter between lectures. One of his friends casually brought up that he had played a gaming session with his girlfriend the previous night. That comment immediately sparked interest among the group. Another friend leaned in, curious, and asked how the experience had gone. The first friend replied with a smirk, half serious and half joking, saying there wasn't really anything else to do with a girlfriend besides playing a game. He wondered aloud whether that was okay or not. The group laughed, and another friend chimed in, asking for more details. He encouraged him to spill how it really went, eager to hear the inside story. The first friend scratched his head and said it was hard to describe in words, but all he could say was that it had been amazing, so good, in fact, that he felt awesome afterward. Jae-seop raised an eyebrow and responded, puzzled by his friend's enthusiasm, questioning what exactly he was saying. The friend, clearly enjoying the attention, explained that there was no better way to describe the situation, and unfortunately, it wasn't something he could show them either. It had to be experienced firsthand. Still skeptical, Jae-seop teased that maybe the whole thing wasn't actually all that great. His friend became visibly annoyed and asked sharply what Jae-seop meant by that. Jae-seop shrugged and remarked that he had heard someone once say that playing certain video games with a girlfriend, especially the more intense kind, could feel good but also came with responsibilities. He added that one had to be considerate of the girl, worry about the aftermath, and that it took a surprising amount of effort. His friend rolled his eyes and replied sarcastically, telling Jae-seop to say whatever he wanted if it made him feel better. Meanwhile, Jae-seop kept his thoughts to himself, thinking that there was absolutely no competition in the way his friend spoke. He silently called men idiots for exaggerating things like this. He reflected to himself, wondering if his friend had truly meant that it was better than playing an actual video game. It didn't even feel like Jae-seop had taught him much, and yet the guy seemed overly satisfied. He thought back to that night and recalled how exhausting the gaming session had been, especially considering the fact that they had gone through it 3 times in a row. No matter how his friend described it, Jae-seop believed the experience was clearly intense and had probably left him more tired than he'd admit. Sua was sitting casually with her friend at the campus cafe when her friend suddenly leaned in and said with a grin that she had received a love confession the day before. Curious, Sua turned to her and asked who had confessed. Her friend replied that it was from a freshman. Sua raised an eyebrow and remarked that her friend must really have some game, then asked who the victim was this time. Her friend giggled and pointed in the distance, whispering that the boy with the earbuds in was the one. It was Jaesiop. As if to prove her point, her friend suddenly called out loudly, trying to get his attention. Sua hadn't noticed him before and turned her head with a surprised look. She watched him walk right past them without even glancing in their direction. Turning back to her friend, Sua muttered in disbelief that he had just completely ignored her. Her friend shrugged, saying that he was probably embarrassed because she had rejected him. Sua, a bit puzzled, asked why she had turned him down. The girl explained that he seemed like a loser to her. She elaborated that during a gathering with their department, when everyone was drinking and having fun at karaoke, Jaesiop had started singing Nuna, You Are My Woman, and ended it with a dramatic love confession. Sua winced and said it was a shame, especially for someone as cute as him. Her friend looked at her strangely and repeated the word, cute, clearly not convinced. Sua simply smiled and said that awkward boys like Jaesiop always had a cute side to them. She admitted to herself that when she first saw Jaesiop, she had thought of him as a shy, clumsy freshman, someone she could tease a little, maybe play around with and teach. That had been her initial intention. But now, thanks to him, things had taken a different turn. She began to recall the memory of their recent workout sessions together. She thought back to that particular yoga session where Jaesiop, clearly overwhelmed, had suddenly stood up and said he needed to use the bathroom. She nodded, giving him permission with a smirk, wondering at the time if the intense training had finally pushed him over the edge. But to her astonishment, he had come back later, looking more energized than ever, and even asked if he should buy some protein bars for the both of them. She remembered him calculating out loud that they might need an entire box at the rate they were going. He had said that despite everything, the workouts felt great, and he always felt fresh afterward. As she was still lost in thought, Jaesiop suddenly spoke and asked her if she had any water stored in her closet. Startled, Sua blinked and asked what he meant. What kind of person would keep water in their closet? He responded that he had asked because it looked like her cupboard was moving slightly. Confused, Sua got up to investigate. When she opened the cupboard door, both she and Jaesiop were stunned to see someone crouching inside. It was Sihyun, sitting curled up in the small space. With a sheepish look on her face, Sihyun apologized quietly, saying she had completely forgotten she was there. Sua was fully aware that Sihyun had been hiding in the cupboard. In fact, it was Sua who had instructed her to hide there. Now, with all three of them sitting in the room together, Jaesiop turned to them and demanded an explanation. He asked them to tell him clearly what was going on. Sua calmly admitted that Sihyun had asked if she could watch them during their yoga session, and she had given her permission. Jaesiop looked incredulous, asking if she had really allowed something like that, to which Sua nodded and started laughing lightly, clearly trying to brush it off. He warned her not to try laughing her way out of this. She shouldn't think she could cover up such a situation with humor. Sua, still amused, recalled how earlier that day, while she and Jaesiop had been on campus discussing the idea of having a private workout session, just the two of them, Sihyun had overheard their conversation. She had approached Sua while she was packing up her things and, with shy but eager eyes, asked whether it would be okay if she quietly watched their training session. Back in the present moment, Jaesiop questioned Sua again, wanting to understand why she had actually allowed Sihyun to observe them. Sua explained that it had been impossible to say no to Sihyun when she had looked so adorably desperate. Then, as if to emphasize her affection, she reached out and hugged Sihyun. Jaesiop wasn't convinced and reminded her that there were certain boundaries that shouldn't be crossed when it came to sharing private moments with others. Sua, however, remained unbothered and casually replied that it wasn't a big deal. She pointed out that the three of them had already trained together before, already shared techniques and experiences. There wasn't really anything left to hide. To her, there was no harm in someone watching what had already been seen. Still unconvinced, Jaesiop tried to insist, but before he could continue, Sihyun stepped in. She looked visibly ashamed and began apologizing sincerely. She admitted that her request had been odd and that she hadn't meant to make him uncomfortable. Without waiting for his response, she suddenly turned and rushed out of the room, clearly overwhelmed by embarrassment. Sua and Jaesiop both remained frozen in place, silently watching her leave. Outside, Sihyun was running in the direction of her house, eyes brimming with tears. Her thoughts were spiraling. She kept thinking about how Jae-seop had asked her why she had gotten so curious about something like that.